Hi, this is Vaughn with Spirit of Health. In this video, we are going to show you how to make meat stock. Now this is found in page 145 of the GAPS book in detail. It's also on my website, spiritofhealthkc.com, and in the Internal Bliss cookbook as well. This is the absolute foundation behind the GAPS diet. So this is a really important recipe for you to know how to make, because this is going to be something you're going to use throughout the GAPS diet, even as you add in other foods. So it's really critical you know how to make a good bone broth soup. So first we're just going to start with making the meat stock. Now if it's the first time you've done this or you're new to the GAPS diet, just keep it really simple. I'm going to give you some variations that you can do, but we just want to make sure that you just keep it simple in the beginning, because making this soup, it might seem daunting if you've never done it before, but it's very simple. Bone broth soups is something that has been consumed around the world for thousands of years. Almost every culture around the world ate soups. Even if you go back in America, not that long ago, a couple generations ago, and this was a regular staple of the diet. So let's get started. The first thing we have here is we just have a basic crock pot. And you can also use a soup pot as well, because you can use the stove to make it, but we got our crock pot here. I'm going to tell you how to do each. But the first thing you want to do is you're just going to add the water here, and I got a gallon of water. That's about standard for a regular sized crock pot. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to add our bone. Now when it comes to bones, you have a lot of different options. You can use any type of animal bone. You can use fish, you can use beef, you could use goat or lamb, you can use any bird, you could use chicken, it could be duck, just any type of bone. Now, the most healing bones are going to be the ones, for the gut anyway, are going to be the bones with the marrow. So beef bones with a lot of marrow is going to be extremely healing for this GAPS diet. Any of the joints, the knuckles, ligaments, all of those are great. Actually, when it comes to healing bones, joints, and ligaments, the chicken bones are really good. People spend a lot of money buying supplements that contain hyaluronic acid, glucosamine, chondroitin. Where are these naturally found? They're found in bones, joints, ligaments, tissues. That's where the supplements are made. So eating bone broth soup, especially chicken soup, is very healing for somebody who has arthritis, who has bad knees, or needs to heal a bone, joint, or ligament. So I just thought I'd mention that. That's really important. What we're going to do for this particular video is we're going to use the beef ribs. Now again, you can use any knuckle or joint or any other type, but we're going to use the beef ribs. So I'm just going to slice this open. Now of course the meat, no antibiotics, no hormones, and even more important to that, 100% grass-fed from a local farmer. We get this from a local farmer that not only is 100% grass-fed, but actually feeds their cattle alfalfa sprouts, and not a drop of soy, corn, nothing genetically modified goes in these animals. And this is very important for the healing part of this diet. So I'm just going to put this whole bone right in there, just like this. Just wash my hands real quick. Now other options, of course, would be like a whole chicken. So here's a whole frying chicken, and same thing, no antibiotics, no hormones, from a local farmer, and you could have just put that whole chicken in there as well. Fish works great as well. Another good option is the pot. So we have a soup pot here, and what you can do is you can put the bone in the soup pot and cover it with water. The only thing with the soup pot is you really want to be careful and watch it, because it can be dangerous. That water can quickly evaporate out of there, and then you could have a problem. So really make sure you're at home and you're watching it if you use the soup pot on the stove. Now with the crock pot, you can just put it on low, and you want to cook it at least overnight. So overnight would be 6 to 8 hours. You can actually cook these bones up to 72 hours. And actually the longer you cook the bone, the more nutrients and minerals that you pull out of those bones that are going to be healing to your digestive tract. So don't worry if you want to let that go 72 hours, that's very beneficial. Now, the meat will be cooked overnight. So within 5 to 6 hours, this meat is going to be cooked. So it's really up to you if you want to pull that meat out and go ahead and have that, and then just cook the bones for 72 hours, or you can just leave the meat on the bone. We actually leave the meat on the bone. We've cooked bones 48, 72 hours all the time. We don't think it's a problem or it causes it to be tough or anything like that. The meat is actually boiled, and boiled meat, because of the water content in it, is actually much, much easier to digest than like fried meat or grilled meat. So it's the best option for you. With the soup pot, that meat's going to be cooked in just a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours. That bone, the meat on the bone is going to be cooked. So you can go ahead and, again, you can remove that if you like and feed your family. Another option, just to give you one more option, is you can actually roast the bones first. You just want to roast it long enough to cook the meat. It's usually about an hour or so, it depends on the meat. But you roast it, and you can have the meat for your family meal, and then you can put the bones in a crock pot or the stock pot and fill it with water and go ahead and cook those bones again for 24, 48, 72 hours, whatever works for you. Okay, so now that we got that, what we're going to do is just going to add a couple of basic things in here, and I want to just give you some options. Some basic things that we do is we put just a few peppercorns in there. So these are just basic run-of-the-mill peppercorns, a couple of those, and a little bit of sea salt. You want to make sure you use sea salt. This is Celtic sea salt, not a table salt. So a Himalayan pink salt or some kind of other natural salt of the earth. A little bit of salt. And then another option, this isn't actually talked about in the GAPS recipe, but we learned that apple cider vinegar or some kind of vinegar in the soup is excellent because it'll actually help draw a lot of the nutrients out of the bones. So we usually add just a little bit, maybe like a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar into the bone as well to just help get more nutrients out. One other option actually is to add eggshells into it. I mentioned earlier the hyaluronic acid. It's very high. Eggshells are actually very high in hyaluronic acid. Very good for cushioning the knees and joints, good for arthritis, rebuilding joints and ligaments, cartilage. So if I had some eggshells, which I don't, but you could put those in here, and of course you're not going to eat the eggshell. You're just going to get the nutrients out of the eggshells right into the broth, and then you'll strain those out when you actually go to cook and eat the meat. So wanted to stress too that there's going to be a little bit of meat on your bone, most likely. Now you can get just bones without meat, and that's fine, and you get the marrow in there. But if it doesn't have a lot of meat, that's okay. The meat's not the really critical healing part of the GAPS diet. It's actually the joints and the tissues and the fats. The fat is the real healer of the gut, and the fat helps with hormone balancing and anti-inflammatory, so many benefits. It's how we produce most of our hormones, especially our steroid hormones. So the fats are the healing part, not necessarily focused on the meat. So you don't have to worry about eating a lot of meat. Eating way too much meat can be problematic anyway. So again, the focus is going to be on the fats. What's really neat about that I learned about the GAPS diet that I really like from a biblical perspective, because there's a lot of people out there that aren't into eating meat or even against eating meat. But again, it's something people have eaten all around the world for thousands of years. It's been a main source of sustenance for thousands of years. In Genesis 1:24, God actually says, "Let the earth bring forth creatures after its own kind." So the creatures of the earth, cattle and fish and all these different animals, actually came out of the earth. So in Genesis 2:7, what does it say? Well, the Lord God formed man out of dust. So we actually also come from the earth. So all of the components that animals contain, those nutrients, are the same components that our bodies contain, and therefore those properties that are contained in the bone broth soups is very, very healing for our bodies as well. In ancient cultures, they would actually eat the organ meats of an animal if they had a problem with that organ. So if they had a problem with their liver, they'd eat liver. If they had a problem with their thyroid, they'd eat thyroid, kidneys, etc. So this is something that's been ancient history for a long time, even since biblical times and probably even before that. So once I have this cooked, let's say I have this cooked for 72 hours and we're ready to go, what you want to do is you want to store it. And you can store it in the refrigerator for about 5 to 7 days. That's about as long as it's going to make it in the refrigerator. The other thing you can do is you can store it in the freezer. So I have an example here of one that we had actually stored in the freezer. You can store it in a mason jar. Now, of course, if you put it in there, you'd want to make sure it was cool to at least room temperature before you put it in the freezer to keep it from potentially cracking. And you want to leave at least 2 inches. See, there's about 2 inches there for it to expand, because it will expand a little bit. But this can keep indefinitely in the freezer, and you can just reuse it as needed. So we have our soup made. We have it stored properly. The next thing we do is we make our soup, which we're actually going to show you in the next video. So this is the stock. The soup would be in the next video. We encourage you to make that be the next recipe or that next video that you would watch. And we just thank you for watching this video. From our kitchen to yours, this is Vaughn with Spirit of Health, and we just hope this food is a great blessing to your body for you and your family.